Hey traders, today we are going to talk about trading during the moon void of course period. I call it trading the void and technical analysis. First, let's talk about what the moon void of course period is. The moon transitions from one sign of the zodiac to the next roughly every 2.5 days. The moon is said to be void of course when the moon makes her last major aspect to a planet before leaving the current zodiac sign. During this time, the moon does not make any further aspects to planets until her ingress into the next sign of the zodiac. Accordingly, the moon is considered to be void or empty. In the stock market, these periods are correlated with high volatility. So there's several different ways that we can calculate the moon void of course period. The traditional Hellenistic astrology method is used by the application I use on my phone called Time Nomad. And that app will tell you the moment that the moon goes void of course from a Hellenistic perspective. And that means that it's the last time it makes an aspect to one of the original planetary bodies. But the time trade software is something that I also use, and I love the time trade software because I don't have to reference when the time is and then apply it to my chart. It automatically shows up on my chart. However, the way the time trade software calculates the moon void of course period is it includes the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So the time periods will be different. Now, I've tracked both time periods. I've applied it to both, and I've found they're actually both accurate. So the highs and the lows during the period of the moon void of course for either one can be used accurately. So the moon goes void of course roughly every 2.5 days for a different amount of time each time because it's making different aspects to different planets each time it transitions. The void of course period can last from anywhere up to a few minutes actually to 2 days. So when we have a longer moon void of course period, that is going to be a period of higher volatility and larger swings in the stock market. The moon void of course period can last anywhere from several minutes to up to 2 days. The moon void of course can be used in two different ways. The moon void of course period is a period of volatility in the stock market. You can expect sudden moves, oftentimes in both directions. You can zoom into the 2-minute chart and mark the open, the high, and the low of these periods, and then these periods act as support and resistance. The direction of the void of course period oftentimes correlates with the market direction after the time the period ends. Not always, but there's a correlation, so you need to pay attention. So as the void of course period is ending, if your price action indicates that it's going to move in the direction it was moving into the end of the period, then you can trade that. Let's take a look at some examples. This is the Bitcoin chart on the 5-minute time frame. And I'm actually going to switch over here to the Bitcoin chart for today, which is Sunday, October 22nd, 2023. And this is an example here of what the time trade software will print on your chart, is this orange dotted line box around the period that the moon is void of course. This is nice because not only do you visually know when it's coming without having to check your app, but you can also just come in here and you can grab a horizontal line, which is what I do. And I throw the line on the high and the low of the period. I oftentimes in the beginning, if I'm trading the period itself, I will use the open of the period. Because as you can see here, actually, if we zoom in, and really it's better to use the 5-minute chart. If we zoom into the 5-minute chart here, you can see that you'll get a more accurate read, but the open here on the 5-minute chart, and sometimes I even zoom into the 2-minute chart, gives us an interesting level that price comes back to repeatedly over and over and over again during the moon void of course period. So as you can see in this example, this is a good example. We have the bounce here, the low towards the end of the period, and we start moving up and we pull back for a 5-minute higher low, and then price blasts off up. So this is a perfect example of being able to use the directional piece of trading the moon void of course period, where you know that as the period is coming to an end, that you can keep your eyes on which direction it's ending, and be open to a trade that way if price action indicates that. Let's move on up here. I want to show you guys something. This is Bitcoin today, right now. And this is fascinating because these dotted lines here are moon void of course periods from a long time ago, as far back as the spring or early summer. And these are reactive today. So I call these void of course hot zones. So when I apply these lines to my charts, I leave them on there indefinitely. I will delete ones that don't seem to be reactive over time, but I keep the ones that are consistently reactive. So you can see actually the price topped out here at this moon void of course hot zone. And then we came down here and we've held this other moon void of course period. Now what's interesting about today is that we are headed into the next week, which has some of the most consecutive extended duration moon void of course periods that I have seen in a long time. We're going to have a total of 4.5 days this week where the moon will be void of course. That means we're going to have some extreme volatility in the stock and crypto markets. So let's zoom out to the 15-minute real quick here and take a look. So the time trade software will print the box ahead of time. We might have to zoom out to the hourly because I believe that the time trade software is going to show a shorter void of course period than the Hellenistic astrology period for tomorrow. The 4.5 days calculation is from a Hellenistic perspective. So this is the box for Monday and Tuesday. And so as we approach the box, I will then be prepared to mark my levels to create the zones. So that sums up how I use the moon void of course. And thank you so much for coming. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Thanks.